Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, any other time that you may be listening to this. Welcome to the first guest interview of 2021. Before we do that, please make sure that you join the Facebook group and also making sure that if you are listening to it, share it with your friends, share it with your dog, share it with whoever it is that you can. Put a little note into the collar of your dog and let them run out just saying, listen to this sick-ass podcast. So listen to this awesome podcast where we bring people into our space. So if that is sharing it on Spotify on your story or taking a screenshot of the app that you listen to it, that would be phenomenal. So today we have Dr. Brittany on. She will talk about her story. We actually graduated together. She's been working as a medical doctor and she is now currently talking about her interest in psychiatry. So without talking too much about it and letting her do the talking, we have Dr. Brittany coming on. I really hope I'm in shot, but it doesn't even matter. Because if I'm not... Huh?
What? Didn't you just see where the couch was?
Yeah, I tried to do that, but then at the same time, I couldn't see if I was in it or not. So it doesn't even matter. But we're in the space. You know what it is. Thank you for coming on. You are the first guest of 2021. So it's awesome to have you on. And I've told you this before, but quite a few people actually, when I put out the call, you were one that everyone's like, oh, if you're in Wellington or like if you're in Auckland, you should get this particular person on. So today we have Dr. Have to say it, Brittany on. And the reason why we do say that is because you work for what you get. But we can, so you know where you are now and kind of there are plenty of steps that get you to where you are. And those are the things that we kind of can go through today, hopefully. And I don't know what we give to other people, but if we can give something to someone, that would be amazing from this. Or maybe you'll be the one who takes something away.
Could be. Or you could take something away.
I think I already am taking stuff away. Yeah. No, thank you for coming out and chatting with me. And so if you are watching on the YouTube, we are in a different space than usual. We're back home in Wellington, so we're going to see how this goes. Pollen's up on 100 right now, so I'm working with that. But how are you feeling?
Really great.
Cool. Right. So we're going to end it there. But anyway, thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming on. And I feel like it's a weird thing right now where social media can kind of catch people up on where you have been. So you are one of those people who everyone shares your stuff, which is fantastic. But then you get to see what you've been up to, the networks that you're part of. Was that something that you consciously were aware of, or was that just something that kind of happened as an organic process of you being you?
The making the networks or the...
No, just becoming this person that everyone kind of goes to for not just advice, but on social media. A lot of people hang on a lot of the words that you say.
Yeah. I don't think it's... I mean, everything I put out is very intentional as well, because one of the things that I've tried to do as well is I check a lot of my privileges. I know I have got quite a few privileges, so I always try and make sure that the way that I put stuff out is not... is just really sensitive of other people in other spaces who maybe don't have the same privileges that I do. And I don't know if I always get that right. And I hope that people would say if I'm not. But yeah, so everything I put out is intentional. And so it's just, I think, more nice to see that that what I'm putting out and that being intentional is what other people connect with. So I think that's more nice to see and reassuring that, me being kind of authentic or just trying to check my privileges and do these other things is actually important or vibed with. I don't know.
Yeah.
How you would put it.
Because I think that's the sort of thing that people are going to connect with more is when they starting to see that someone is acknowledging the flaws in a lot of the stuff that they already do as well. Yeah. And I think that's something that you do really well. And a lot of people, I've tried to talk about being a bit more vulnerable, as some people would say, and just being properly authentic, but not just authentic to the things that I do well. Yeah. You're very good at seeing the things that you could work on. Yeah. And has that been something that's always been part of you, or has it been something that you've been working on?
I think growing up, I think we were talking a little bit before about that. Well, we weren't really talking about it. We mentioned it about that belonging and stuff. And I think I've always been very aware. And I think you can't not be aware of the things that you do wrong. Yeah. I don't know. So growing up, I was always a little, anxious personality. So always very aware of how I interact with people or come away from interactions and wonder if I did something wrong or how I could, come away from interactions and wonder how I do things wrong. And then from that, I would be like, how could I do better for next time? So... always thinking about how I can be better. Yeah.
And does that change the way that you look at making mistakes now then?
I think a little bit. I think I don't beat myself up so much about it and I don't it could, because if I do something wrong, it's not a reflection of me as a person. The behavior might be wrong, but that doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means that I now know for next time, or I've learnt something, and as long as I make sure that anyone else involved in whatever that situation was feels okay, or like just check in, hey, like, are you all good? I don't know, but yeah.
No, but I feel like some of those things, because I mean, we live in an age right now where, people are spreading praise for the stuff that you do online. But let's say you did something that was like maybe questionable, and that could be the end of you right then, even though that's like in that moment, that was just what you felt compelled to do.
Yeah.
It's not a reflection of you overall, but now that's the only thing that people actually have in the public domain of you. So like, does that ever worry you that there is a possibility of you like just being cancelled, I guess is the word?
Cancelled. That's such a funny term. And I don't like it. But anyway, I think about it, but I think the reality is something, especially in the last 6 months to a year, that I have really started to understand what is important to me and what I stand for. And I think that's what keeps me grounded. If something gets me, I guess, cancelled for living up to those values, which I know are good, then that's someone else's problem. And so I can't imagine that would ever happen, but I also know that the people around me, I've got some really good friends, and I've got my family, and I know that if I ever did something wrong, I know that they would be pulling me up on it anyway, and that I would be able to have a safe space with them to talk through it all and how to react to it, because if I did do something wrong, I have no qualms about being like, oh, I did this. That's me. That, like, taking that accountability. I have no qualms about that. So, and if that gets me cancelled, then that's other people's problem. That's not me. Like, okay, that's
But also being a doctor now, and like being in that sort of, so anyone who remembers back when you were a kid, it was either like, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a police officer, or I want to be a doctor. Like it was always that thing, and you just assumed that a doctor was like the smartest person in the world.
You
like,
assume that, yes.
Yeah. So like back in then, it's like you couldn't do any wrong, but now that you're where you're at, it sounds like you like are just consistently learning. Like it's not one of those things where you're like, I know everything now. No. And so like the entire journey though has been, it's a weird thing where you start off just thinking like, okay, I'm going to be a doctor, therefore I will know everything, to now I am a doctor, I don't know much, and I just have to keep learning. So how that kind of like, how do you keep that humility around you, about you as well?
Interesting question. I think the reality is, I just don't know everything. How can I ever know everything? And I think if you come across like that, then no one's going to like you. And if you're a doctor, you're working with people all the time. So, I mean, that's not saying that how people have moved through medicine, that has been a big thing, that you're the top of the hierarchy. You're like, you're a certain type of persona, and that feeds into a lot of people's egos. But I think the reality is just seeing what people go through and sitting with them in some of their most physically, mentally vulnerable moments is, I don't know, I think that's humbling. Like, who am I to be able to share this space with someone, to connect with someone at this space? So I don't think I could ever have an ego about it, but at the end of the day, like, my family's always there to count me. So
it's an interesting thing, right? Like, you could go off and do all these amazing things, and you can be in different spaces and be like almost, that person that everyone kind of looks to, like, you're the expert, blah blah blah. But then Christmas time's interesting, because that's when you come back to your family. Did that happen like for this Christmas for you? Not in the sense that I needed my ego to be checked, but more in the sense that I always learn more, and we briefly talked about this before, but I always learn more when I come back home, about myself, about why I am the way I am, the way I react to things, because at the end of the day, like, our family is like going to be the root of where lots of these things stem from. So I think, recently I've come back home a few times, because there's been some pretty big milestones in my family, with my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary and my mum's 50th. So I've had, in the space of a few months, I've had a good chance to see how I'm reacting, and also to try and improve that. So that's been really interesting. So not so much about ego, more around the other stuff. And during your upbringing, like, your family were quite pivotal to a lot of your, like, you and developing you?
Totally. I had quite a blended family, so I had a number of family groups. So I can, very, very important and essential, and central to who I am as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was there any time like during your upbringing where you felt like you like had a stronger connection to them or like a falling out or anything? Because that all happens, like it could be a mix of what's going on at school or the different social groups you're in, but like it's an interesting dynamic because your family are always going to be the ones who are literally there.
Yeah.
But then everyone else kind of comes and goes. Like, did you have that journey through that all?
How much do I say that's not pretty much? Who's listening? So yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I had a few different family groups, and my mum. Yeah, so I have a stepdad and I have a birth dad who I don't see much, but I see his family, his parents and that family, and then my stepdad's family as well, and then my mum's family. And I just have to say my mum's family, my Samoa and Cook Island side, are the other family that I've really grown up with. The other two sides definitely were very integral, and I still interact with them. But yeah, my mum's family as a whole have been where have been really central, and within the immediate family, like my grandparents, her siblings, there's definitely no falling out or anything like that. No changes around there, but definitely, things that my grandparents did have affected my mum and her siblings, and how they interact with the world and how they parent, and then how I am as a person and how my cousins are as a result of their parents, and then from there. So that's interesting to see. I don't know if that's...
No, that's fine. And there's like during that though, because it is true, all of the different interactions you have, like we discuss this all the time, is something that you do, and then someone will say like, "Oh, that reminds me of this person," and you're like, "It probably is because of that person."
Oh,
like, I literally got it from them. Yeah.
But I think it's really important. I mean, there's always going to be good stuff and there's going to be bad stuff, and I think it's the really important thing is noticing it and being able to then, if it's not a great or if it's more of a negative thing, learning how to adjust to that. Or
I think we go through a lot of life though, like being so unaware though.
Very unaware, and I think that's such a big thing. I think if you don't have that awareness, I think it's just contributing to you not being able to really reach your full potential. Because if you can't, and it's not saying that you're a bad person at all. It's just behaviours. It's all behaviours. If we can't, address those, then we're always going to be living life in sort of a suppressed state. I don't know if that's what you would say.
I guess we're just like not as high up or that we could be, because you have so many blind spots that you're just not addressing.
And I know, and I know I am self-aware, somewhat self-aware, but I know there's always going to be things that I've missed, and there's always going to be new things that I see or find out about myself and realize about myself. And yeah, it's just learning. I think it's all just learning and being open and willing to the process of I'm going to always find out new stuff. Yep. And that's okay.
Yeah. And has that always been your philosophy though? Because I know that when you come into university and you start learning a little bit, you do feel like you know everything. So because you came down, you did health science, you just went straight into medicine. Yeah. And that was your thing. Like actually, let's step back a second. Like why health science and why thinking about medicine?
It's really funny. I think my granddad planted the seed. He always, and he still says it to me, he says that his dad he came over from Samoa in the 60s, and he said that his dad wanted him to be a doctor, but he wasn't smart enough. And so he would always put that on me, and I'm the oldest grandchild, so I think there was that subliminally.
Yep, there we go.
But actually, in school, I just was doing all the sciences and the maths. I was just following my friends. They were doing those, and then they wanted to go do health science. They wanted to come. They wanted to go to Otago, and so I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that too. So it wasn't really, I don't feel like it was really a decision I made. I just kind of followed everyone, and then I ended up in medicine, and I was like, okay, I'm here. All right. Yeah. And that in itself is a privilege to be able to have that access that I didn't even make the decision to do that. I just ended up there. And I did apply for scholarships, and in the scholarships I was like, yeah, I want to be a radiologist, which is like a doctor, and then you specialise in radiology. But I had no idea what that was. I just said it because I thought that's what. Yeah. I was like, oh, looks good, and maybe I'll do that. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know.
So it was like you came in to do health science, but like there was never any questions. So I mean, you had the radiology thing, but when you were at high school, like how early would you say that seed was planted for you to like kind of gear yourself up to being a doctor?
Well, my grandfather would also always would take us for this drive, and there's this house down the road, and it has like these peacock there's peacock, this fence that has peacocks on the side, and there's this big gate, and then it's like a tower, this house, and it looks all over the bay, like Wellington Harbour and stuff. And he said, "You're gonna buy me that house," and so I always remember that. But like just that, I think he just kind of geared us up for that work ethic and that to be some sort of successful, westernized society perception of successful job, successful person. So yeah, he planted that seed, I think, early on, because he'd planted it as well in my mum, and she worked really hard, and her siblings and stuff, and then my stepdad works really hard too. So that work ethic at least was already there. And then I think, the work ethic was there, but when I guess I decided to do medicine was more, my friends wanted to do medicine, so okay, well, we'll go down to Otago and do that. You have to do the health science first, and then you apply. So I guess that's what we're doing. And then actually in first year, well, especially when it was my year, which was 2011, medicine and dentistry were the ones that everyone vied for.
Sure.
And that was like, if you get into those, you're like the man, that's the ones you want to go for, and not realizing that other options are also totally viable and have the same weighting. Like medicine is not the be all and end all. To be honest, most doctors are annoying. Nah, maybe a little bit, but like there's so many other cool specialties. But when I was down there, there was that perception there. So obviously, I'm going to be going for the one that that's where I'm supposed to go.
Sure, and then going through your time in medicine. So I've had quite a few friends go through. I live with doctors now, and they.
Guts.
There are a lot of things about the degree in general that like are questionable in terms, like, I guess when you're coming from like an Indigenous perspective and all those sorts of things, where you're just like, is this really so? If we're going to be dealing with like trying to help at a preventative level or a rehab level, and we're going to be dealing with a multicultural society, are we actually getting those tools? Like, I don't know how much you want to get into that, but how did you feel as a Pacific Islands person coming through a degree that was kind of set up for not us?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think one of the things about my background is that I didn't really, it's going to sound really weird, I didn't have any Pacific Island friends until I got to uni. Yeah. So I grew up in a very westernized environment. I didn't know how to, or wasn't intentionally connecting with my culture, and so it wasn't until uni that I started doing that. So I think I didn't, because I was spending so much time trying to understand how I fit within the world, within the life, I didn't notice it so much. But when I look back, there's definitely, and I don't know how much that's changed. It's been like 5 years since I've finished. They're
putting some good work in, I'll say that.
And from some of the stuff I've seen and some of the leaders that we have in the health science field, especially at Otago, I can see that things would definitely be improving, and I could see that was happening for the lower year groups as I was getting higher through. It's not made for us, but again, I don't know how it's changed, but it's I think we're talking about before that individualistic, collectivist. There's space for Western medicine, and there's also space for Indigenous teachings, but that at least when I was going through was not something well taught. It's
kind of one of those things where the answer is, and it always is, the answer is like a balance of everything. Like you need to find where you're not too extreme one way, but then not too extreme the other way. Like there's a balance in the middle where you can take learnings from both. Like there's no one right way, but there's going to be, as long as you have as many tools as possible to deal with different things. And definitely. Your time coming through as a student though, and because you moved to a different city. That's one thing, and then you have to learn how to cook and clean and do all that sort of stuff in a flat and find flatmates. But then also finding yourself, like, because this is the first time you're away from your family and you get to learn that. How did that all kind of play into everything?
That was always a big thing. That was always really central to me. Even going through, primary school, college, that not knowing who I was and then being even more confused, coming into more Pacific Island spaces and just being very confused and not feeling like you belong to either, and very central to the way I interacted with the world.
Yeah.
Very confused.
Yeah.
Led to a lot of insecurities and just not feeling like enough or not good enough. And I had to prove myself, really feeling like I had to prove myself because I'd spent so long growing up very westernized. Like I had to prove myself and kind of, being quite white passing, had to prove that I belonged within the Pacific Island community and that I had something to offer. Yeah. Despite not, yeah.
Yeah. So as in but you're a pretty big advocate though for a lot of the Pacific spaces.
Yeah.
Like you are out there and you're putting yourself out there as that person. But I think, so just kind of how I view it from my perspective and seeing it, I just see that you are someone who, I think it's when you're for the cause.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you look or there's something about you. There's an energy that some people can pick up.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's if that's too esoteric and we shouldn't be talking about this at all, but it is there's a something about a person that most people can pick out in terms of how genuine you really are to wanting to help these sorts of people. So I mean, if you are properly advocating for all these different things, how do you finish the day and not feel like you have to add supplementary things to yourself, rather than just complimenting who you already are?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons when going through my university degree, one of the reasons that I got so burnt out and so tired and didn't, felt like mentally unwell for a little bit, was that I didn't know how to find that balance. It was just trying to give as much as possible to lots of different things, because it wasn't just Pacific Island stuff as well. It was also being involved with the Medical Student Association and I don't know why, that just perception that I just had to give and give and give and give. Whereas now I think I found more of a balance of actually, doesn't matter, I'm good enough. The blood of my ancestors is good enough. Doesn't matter how much it is, doesn't matter how it presents itself, and visually I'm always good enough. And that's a really powerful thing. And it's hard though, because I also acknowledge that I have done work. So that's also backing me. I know that is there. So I don't know how, I don't know how you, I think it's hard to be I'm good enough regardless. So now I'm I'm good enough regardless. I know that I do stuff, and I know that at the end of the day, at this point in time when I'm trying to be a bit more concentrating on myself and working on myself to be my best self for me, but only then can I give. I think in this space is where I know that at the end of the day, my purpose is to help contribute to more equitable outcomes, and knowing that I know that, as long as I know that that's what I'm for, then everything else falls into place. Doesn't matter if I'm concentrating on myself right the second. I know that that's where my purpose is going.
So you're thinking in terms of investments for the future.
And investing in myself is part of that, you know, in this role. I know my job will take me there, know, so
so was there a distinct change though in your philosophy on all that, because you said you were a pretty much an all giver to now just actually I'm going to take a little bit of time so that I can give better in the future. Was there a particular instance that happened, or did you have a conversation with someone, or did you just burn yourself to the ground so much that you just I can't do this anymore?
I think unfortunately it was really the burning myself out so much that I had to reevaluate. So in 5th year and in 6th year as well, I just got really, really burnt out, and I had to reevaluate where I was at, and then I burnt myself out a little bit more in 6th year, and then kind of had it. And so when we finish our degree, we go to a different hospital, and so I came back home because I was I need to be back home. I need to be with my family. So that was a year where I sort of recovered a little bit, and I think so. Then when I moved up to Auckland, I sort of had a better sense of who I was. It was more understanding who I was and what I needed to be able to. I knew that I couldn't keep burning myself out just to give. I had to take some back. So that was when I sort of understood more about resting and not overcommitting so much. And and then this year itself, I think last year, I got really burnt out again in 2018, into 2018. So I took last year technically off. I contracted, so I'd work for 2 weeks and then I could have a week off. So that was when I learned more about rest, and then. So coming into this year and having a relationship breakup as well, I've had to come into the space where I need to understand myself more and knowing that actually, these are the things that I stand for. These are the things that I value. And I know that, and that's my truth. So no one can take that away from me. And that's where I'm, So I know where I'm going and being okay with it.
Yeah. So being like 100% okay with who you are and not needing, because we were talking about anchors before, and like whether that be like another person, and it's thinking, if I leave this relationship, am I actually going to be okay by myself?
Yeah.
And that's just because we never kind of had that, I guess, that trust in yourself that you are like good enough to kind of carry that on.
Yeah, I think the trust in yourself, but also at least for me, it was very much the I need someone to support me. Like, I need someone who's going to be the person at home that, not necessarily just at home, but I can come home to, because I'm always going to be busy. I'm always going to be giving. So I need someone to then, when I come home, give to me.
Sure.
And be able to completely emotionally offload on that person. That was always, I think, my perception. And I think my not so good approach to relationships in the past. That's been how I've approached it, whereas now I'm like, that's actually not fair to do to someone else. Like, can you imagine like meeting someone whose expectation is that they get to offload on you every day? Like, that's not all good. So I think that's also been an interesting learning curve as well. But whereas now I've tried to cultivate stronger relationships with other people, platonic relationships with like my mum, and then I've got some really, really good friends who help keep me grounded and who are really good to talk to. So cultivating that when I'm needing to emotionally offload, I have my sources to go to, and it's not always the same person. And that helps to spread it out a bit. But not relying on one person and realizing that I can't just rely on myself. You do need support, but putting that expectation on one single person is kind of not all good.
Yeah. And then, so when you're spending, so you're not going to spend all your time by yourself, but then when you are by yourself, what are the things that you are consciously trying to do or like aware of now that you're just like, okay, this is me doing this for myself?
I do, because I have got myself into space where I'm a little bit busy. So the days that I have a calendar. So I check, when do I have days off? I'm very much like, okay, don't organize anything. If stuff happens on the day, cool, that you want to do, cool. But I have to consciously say, do not organize to meet up with anyone on this day, because that's your only free day. Or the other things that I do is I've started doing, recently I've been playing like indoor, not indoors, like social sports. And that's cool. And then I do dancing with Uratabu, which is like a collective for Indigenous women, which is awesome. So that's really energy giving. So I know I need to go to that. And then there's a few other like classes that I do that are fun. And then if I'm not doing that, then I'm so happy to just sit at home, chill at home, watch Netflix, or like if I feel like it, go for a walk if I want to. But it's just about what do I feel like doing and then doing it. Yeah.
And how are you with yourself?
What do you mean?
Like, how do you talk to yourself now?
Talk to myself?
Both. Like talk in terms of like, do you put on voices and talk to yourself? No, I mean like what are the... I
do that.
You even... Yeah, almost the same. I talk all the time. I talk all the time to myself, and I'm just like...
Mostly when I'm driving.
Yeah. And I'm like, man, imagine that. Like, imagine if this was an interview right now and I was recording.
Yeah, same. I don't know.
But more like just self-talk and like...
That's such a big one. Because obviously I think a lot of people have this like body image issues. And so I think, and then as well, the Queen, Brené Brown, I've listened to a lot of audiobooks, and one of them I realised that I catastrophize a lot.
Sure.
So, and the example that I always use of that is that I'll be at a stoplight and people will cross the road, I'll be like, what if I just hit them?
What? Okay, right. Sorry,
like,
I'm here for you.
Then I'll be like... And I'd be like, what would happen after that? And then how would I react? And how would I do? So that's when my mind would go like random times. Often, I don't know often when I'm driving, but I would just think of worst case scenarios. What if this happened? And how would I react? And how would I feel? And I would really feel how I feel. Or what if someone died? In that moment, just before you're falling asleep, you're like, how would I feel? And then you like get really sad. So recognizing that that's kind of catastrophizing, and that allowing myself to sit in that space and in those emotions is actually... sets my brain in such a way that I'm more likely to think of those scenarios and more likely to be in that space. And it's a negative space. So whenever that happens, or whenever I start to get into those thoughts, I have to actively stop those thoughts. So yeah, actively stop those thoughts and distract myself or think of something else, and then they go away. So they happen less often. So it was catastrophizing, and then stuff around body image and self-talk, and I just don't say negative stuff to myself anymore. And I look in the mirror and I'm like, man, you're so fucking hot. Like you look in the mirror and you say that stuff to yourself. Like, I don't know if. Yeah, or I just don't think anything. If I'm having a bad day, I'm not thinking great. I just don't say anything to myself. I don't allow a negative thought to form, or I don't allow it to get past. As soon as I recognize it's happening, don't allow it to get past a certain way. And then the third thing, sorry, that was a few things, but the third thing is actually realizing and recognizing that a lot of the way that people interact with you is actually something that they're experiencing themselves, and so not putting other people's anxiety or struggle onto myself. So if someone doesn't reply to me, I would be like, oh no, what have I done wrong?
Right.
Like, oh, I've done something wrong. Like, I need to reply to them straight away and be like, reassure them or something. But actually now recognizing, like, that's okay. They're probably dealing with something. They'll get back to me when they can, and if they don't, that's they've got something going on. That's
right.
Fine. And not putting that on myself anymore, because I think I took on a lot of what other people were experiencing and felt like I needed to take on. Yeah. So just recognizing that other people have their own issues. Just doing you, and if someone does have an issue with you, if they don't talk to you about it, well, again, that's them. Like that's a them issue. Like if they're not talking to you about it, you can't do anything about it. So. Yeah. Few things.
No, I find that all of those different things are like really, really important, and I think a lot of the downfall, or especially with me, I'll just use myself as an example, but like not that the world centers around me, but like my world is in my head, and my head makes up stories for every single thing that's going on. Yeah. And so like a lot of the time you're just like, oh, like that didn't happen, it's because I did this, therefore, and then like that happened, oh, I remember back when I was 7 when I accidentally spat the gum, like blah, blah, oh, that's why now you're not talking to me. But like we can't control all of those different things that are going on. That's like only how we react. And what I've been trying to do recently, and I've talked about this on here before, but it's just like if people cut you off, and like don't react in that moment, because like what if they're trying to get to the hospital because they need to get someone there. So I just like okay, that's fine, move on. I can't. So it's just. Do
you feel that you create another scenario for that? Because you kind of did get that example, but is that not always the case, or do you think you create another scenario to make it okay?
Yeah, that's a good point. You're living in my head a little bit more, but no, I think I just try to see the benefit of the doubt. I think benefit of the doubt for most things, and just not, I think taking on everyone else's issues yourself. And I think it's just, it might be the way we're wired though, because like I always want to help. Yeah. I always want to help.
I don't know, is it like a Pacific Island thing? Is that, is that a dual identity thing? Because I think a lot of people take that stuff on, and I've been thinking about it recently, but a lot of misinterpreting of situations and scenarios. And it's only now that I'm realizing that the way that where I've reacted to it in the past I've misinterpreted so many people. Yeah. Because like sometimes I don't reply to people's messages. I leave my messages on unread all the time, because I'm like, I don't have the capacity right now. And so now that I'm doing that, I can see that sometimes other people are probably doing that too. And so now I'm like, it's okay. Like, don't worry about it. It's fine.
It's so funny how we're all in our own little circles thinking the exact same thing about everyone else. Yeah. It's so weird how that happens.
It's really strange. And that's why you got to talk about it, because when you start realizing other people are like, oh, it's fine. But I think as well, like, if you have close friends and you are feeling that, I think asking as well, because sometimes you do have to reality check yourself. Like you have to be like, hey, if you don't reply, like, are you all good? And if they say, oh, shoot, this happened, that means the next time it happens, you can be like, last time it was fine, it's just that happened. Like as you get to know people more, you understand their motivations a bit more, and you can, be okay with it,
Yeah. And we're like living on assumptions most of the time.
Exactly. We are. Always so are. Yeah.
So it's so easy. I mean, because especially where we are now, just with, I'm not going to call it PC culture, but like just how it's very easy to offend someone. Very, very easy, just like if you accidentally say something. And the thing is, I'm only aware of what I'm aware of. Yeah. And if, for example, so like one that I've done recently, which I still am so sorry that I did it, but I, called someone by the wrong pronoun.
Okay, yeah.
But instead of being told, like, okay, I'm actually go by this, I would have been like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Okay, from now on, but I didn't know what I did wrong. Yeah. And then later on, I was just told, like, hey, you really offended it, and I was like, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't know I did it. Yeah. And that's what everyone else is kind of living with. It's just that we kind of only know what we know, and now when we do this, we have to just, say something. We can have open dialogue about things that we do wrong.
We totally can. And then I was just thinking about the scenario as well, because sometimes I get, like if I did something wrong as well, on social media as well, like if I say something wrong, if I use wording incorrectly, I would like to know.
Yeah.
But then part of me is also like, actually, we do need to be doing work in those areas to make sure that we're doing, I don't know how because I think about it sometimes, I'm like, the burden of having to correct someone about your pronoun all the time would actually be really, specifically the scenario, would actually be really frustrating, to be honest. I'd find that frustrating to keep having to correct someone. It's like if someone said your name wrong all the time, you can be like, oh, it's not Bridget.
Sure,
That would be annoying. So, you can see both sides. It's like, maybe they didn't have the capacity at that time to tell me, but then also so what can I do? I don't know. Sorry, I was just going into your scenario.
But that is really, it's really true. Like it does come from both ways.
It does,
we can't always expect, it was like when the whole, like the racism thing, like the Black Lives Matter thing all happened, and it was like, it wasn't on Indigenous people to keep reminding people and telling them about how it all worked. Like we also need to educate ourselves, and like I think everyone just needs to continue to educate themselves as well, and just maybe it is just an awareness thing, and just like if you do make it wrong as well, don't try to protect yourself. Just be like, shit, that was my bad. Like
actually that's not a reflection of you as a person. Again, it's a behavior or it's something that you just did wrong, and that doesn't mean you're a bad person. You just need to fix it and move on. Well, not move on, but you just need to fix it and try not to do it again and be more aware of it for the future. You know, the accountability, like being accountable is saying, I'm sorry for this, not I'm sorry for this, I was blah 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 blah. I was no, just be like, just I'm sorry. No,
that's right. I have to write maybe a thesis. I used to just write a thesis for all the times I'm sorry, and I didn't mean that. Blah blah. This is, you can see how this was misinterpreted. Blah blah blah. And then it's like, it's fine. I'm like, just put so much energy into that.
Yeah, but that pressure as well. I used to really feel like if I said sorry, it had to be like a. But really, actually, on accountability, it's just I'm sorry, for this. No excuses. Don't need to make anything up. You just that's it. You know.
Do you find that you're a lot better with it now because you deal with people almost on the daily? Like it's pretty big things. It's not like you just go in and you see people and they get a prescription or something. Like you're actually dealing with people who could be at their most vulnerable state, either physically, mentally, or something like that.
I think that's not what made me more aware of it, but it helps in my practice. Yeah, just being like, oh shoot, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Because if you were taking that burden every single time, every single day, I don't know if you'd be able to cope.
I think I don't know. Because I think. Yeah, I think as well, realizing that sometimes it's not your responsibility to take on what someone's experienced. Because I think we're on a. Whereas, so say someone comes in and talks about something. Part of it is just, and we've sort of touched on this before. Part of it is just being able to be like, you've been through so much, and I'm so sorry you've been through all that. But I don't actually have to say sorry about that because I know it's not my fault, and I know they know that it's not my fault. But sometimes it depends on the space, depends on the person. Sometimes I'm so sorry that you've been through this. Is something that needs to be said because maybe they haven't had that from somebody else. But it's not often like that. People aren't often coming in to have apologies made because the reality is, I don't know, but from my perspective, from what I've seen, is that they're not looking for someone to apologize. They're looking for someone to just be there. Yeah.
It's something that I used to do when I call people, or they'd call me, and I just be like, at the end of the call, I just be like, okay, this is 5 minutes. You can either say stuff or not say stuff. I'm just gonna be quiet. I'm just gonna be on the phone. And then usually we just get really not sad, but it's just a really nice time for someone to finally feel like, oh, I've got someone there.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And I think sometimes we get caught up in I don't know, our own agenda for something or whatever is going on our head at the time. We easily forget to just stop and be like, hey, what's in your mind?
Yeah. And you've got a new kind of perspective on that, I guess, because it kind of changes. I think being calm and being able to take a step back so that you can see longevity in the game, rather than always wanting new things and that. We were talking about that earlier.
Oh, yes,
can you go through that thought process for us?
Thanks for signposting that.
We got it.
Really well. So we were talking about medicine and how everyone's just trying to get to the next step, and it's not just medicine, it's in life. Everyone's trying to get to the next goal, reach the next destination, and everyone leading up to it is like, oh, once I get to here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to prioritize my family, going to prioritize me, and then you get there and you keep going. We know that's not true, that you're not going to prioritize it. If you're not doing it now, then you're not going to do it. So the reality is, why not just do it now and prioritize yourself? And so that's something that I've really learned the last couple of years when, I wasn't doing so well in 2018 and coming up into now, is that actually I'm just going to stop and slow down, and I don't need to race to the next destination. How about we, there's all those quotes like, enjoy the journey, not the destination, But actually it is that. It's actually just, hey, just like enjoy where you're at now. And maybe it's a shit time, but just like own that space. Like, yeah, it's a shit time, but actually things are going to get better. Ideally, things will get better. Things will progress. Life will move on and keep going and not, not just trying to race, just taking it a step, chilling out, going with the flow, which is definitely not how my personality has been. But just learning to just be like, oh, it's all good. We'll just take it as it comes. But I want to enjoy this time. Because we're talking about the way that my course works is that it's 5 years the training for psychiatry, it's 5 years if you do all the exams and stuff and get it all done at the same time. And everyone's like, you want to get through it as fast as possible. I'm like, but why? Like, why do we need to do that? Like, I'm about to take sort of 6 months off, but 6 months off my training to work in Australia for a bit. And I'm like looking forward to that, just getting out of New Zealand for a bit. And that's kind of for me. Like, that's, I don't, and I know I'll take another year out at some point to do something else, like it's just going to, I'm just going to enjoy it. Yeah. And I'll be a more well-rounded psychiatrist once I'm finished. But, yeah.
How do you remind yourself, though, that that's what you're doing it for, rather than just being like, oh, no, now I'm getting old and I probably should have just gone, there's always going to be that sort of doubt that you've maybe taken the wrong path?
Well, I think it was earlier this year that I actually had some epiphanies about the age thing, because I briefly mentioned it when you're sitting at the camera. We were talking about it. It wasn't out of context. But like one of my things is I've always really, really wanted to be a mum. I really, really want children, and I'm 27 now, and I think I've constantly waited, I want to be in a certain space, and I think the reality is I want to be at my best for my children. And so one of the things is I want to have kids. I want to be a young mum, so I want to have kids by like 26. I want to have like a kid, maybe another one on the way. And then after that, I was like, well, if I already have one by 30 and then I'll be pregnant with another at the age of 30, then that would be okay. But I had to kind of confront that as I was getting a bit older, but also be like, if I keep reaching these ages and keep putting expectations on these ages for things to happen, well, then I'm never ever going to be satisfied. If I'll get to every birthday and I'll be like, oh, another year older. What do I want to like be sad and feel stink about reaching another birthday? Like for the rest of my life, like you have aunties and uncles and people, and they're like, oh, no, I'm 50, like, oh, it's another year older, and they hate talking about the age, but I'm like, why? Like, so I had to confront that earlier in the year. So I think that has helped with this situation in terms of the slowing down, is that I'm like, it'll happen, and I'll have more plentiful, rich experiences just by enjoying it. Like if I'm constantly trying to reach the destination, I'm going to miss all this stuff, and if I'm not enjoying it, then what was the point in getting to where I was in the first place? So I think, just slowing down and just reevaluating a little bit. And I've had to specifically write out the things that are important to me or some of my values. And I think that's been good, because now I have something I can refer to, say this is what I'm doing. Right. This is what I'm doing. Yeah.
So when opportunities do come up, you just like, does this align with these things that I've written? And like, okay, I have to say no to that. Does it make it easier to say no?
Have I had to say no to anything? Oh yeah, I have. I have said no to something, but that's just not happening often, and sometimes it's more like, look, I can't do it here, not straight up saying no, but I can't do it here, but I could do this. So just being like realistic about what I can and can't do and what I have the capacity to do. So
you're learning just more and more about yourself, really.
Learning more about myself. Yeah.
And then finding
I'm an expert in myself.
Well, that's good. I don't think we have enough people who even know what that is. We were talking about it like earlier, and we were talking about emotions and all that sort of stuff, and just some people just don't know what anger feels like. Where they'll just be sitting there and they'll just be like, why am I fuming? Like, why does this happen? What are the things that get me to this point? And they can never identify it. So
because if you can't identify that you're feeling that way, then you can't identify what's caused you to be that
Yeah.
way. I feel it a lot when I'm feeling, it's like, sorry, slightly off topic, when I get anxious disposition, when I get anxious about stuff. And so sometimes I've started identifying what my things are when I feel anxious. And so now I can recognize that. So I'll be like in the car and be like, why do I feel so tense for? Why am I driving so erratically? You know, within the rules of the road. But,
yep, nice.
You know,
We're not illegal here.
Yeah, legal. We're legal. So, you know, and then I'll be like, oh, okay, wait. What has made me feel like this? And then I can backtrack. But I couldn't do that if if I didn't know what I was feeling. And then once I backtracked, I'm like, oh, it was because there was an email that I left unread, but I need to reply to at some point, but I forgot about it. You know, like stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, okay, like, I'll write it on my hand.
Yeah.
You know, not my phone, obviously, because again, legal.
Yeah,
but,
we're
you
legal.
know, yeah, but like write it on my hand. Okay, cool. Now
Yeah.
I can let that go and maybe do some deep breathing to bring myself down. But, you know, yeah.
It's a really interesting way to think about it, because so I've been playing with meditation a little bit more recently. Like I used to meditate all the time, but it would always be like 10 minutes and I'd be guided. But now what I've tried to do is just like, don't worry about the breath, don't worry about sounds, don't worry about humming and hawing, just sit there.
Oh, yeah,
for like
yeah.
about maybe and have thoughts.
Yeah.
So what happened was I used to always try to push thoughts out and be in the moment.
Yes.
But now what I can do is properly like organize everything
Yeah.
by just being still.
Yeah.
So I've been working with that a bit more, and it's the
Cool.
same thing where I can go back like, oh, I didn't pay that, and like that's why. So when I get out of this, I need to prioritize what I need to do,
Yeah.
and I'll go out and do that.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're always just like trying to distract our mind from where it is in that point, we're
Yeah.
never gonna identify what's actually going on. We're just
Yeah,
kind
exactly.
of pushing things to the side a little.
Yeah, we are avoiding it. But yeah, sometimes we just need to allow ourselves to sit within that space and be like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, and allow those thoughts to happen. Yeah.
So why are you? So sorry. This is like a really like. Oh, why did this happen? But like, people graduate and then they end up going into the field, but then you kind of start to specialize a little bit.
Yeah.
Why have you chosen this kind of road as your like area that you
Mental
want to
health.
go? Yeah.
Yeah, I always was interested in like psychology stuff. I didn't think I would do it as a field, but my backup plan, if I didn't get into med, which I was actually quite excited about, was I was going to do stats and psych, a double major, and then I was going to be a teacher.
Oh, cool.
So I was slightly disappointed when I got into med because I was like, oh, but yeah.
What?
Like I was like, oh damn, okay, I'm a step path. But that was my backup. So I've always liked psych. But it was never really an option, at least when I was going through, you didn't really think about it. It was either you go in the hospital or you specialise in GP.
Sure.
Like you either specialise in one of those two areas. Like psych, you don't even really think about. But I did do a lot of psych runs, especially in child and adolescent. I find that really, really interesting. Teenagers with, anyway.
Yep.
So I thought about it, but I was never gonna choose it, and it wasn't until 2018 when I started my thing, and then I quit my job, and then I had to get my mentor. I had to have a supervisor, and so the person I asked was one of the Tongan psychiatrists, who's a child and adolescent psychiatrist up in Auckland. He was my supervisor, and we had our first meeting, and he does this thing where he like psychoanalyzes you. It's really funny, and I want to do that to other people, but like he does this thing, and so he sat down with me, and he's like, I want you to be a psychiatrist. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do it just because you tell me to do it. Like, I need to decide for myself. But it sort of put the thought in my head. I was thinking about picking GP because I was like, I'm done with the hospital, like, stuff those guys. So then I worked in different areas. I worked in different hospitals, and I did a couple of I did a medicine run, and in the medicine run I had to deal with some GPs calling me, and they were calling me about stuff, and I just thought, oh, this would be awful to have to deal with. Like, I would, like, how, and just in that scenario, what they were calling me for specifically, I was just like, oh, how, like, kind of boring. Like, oh, I'd hate to have to be calling doctors in the hospital about this thing. So that kind of put me a little bit off GP, and then I was down in Palmy, and when you're in Palmy and you're a junior doctor, when you're on call, you're sort of so when you're a junior doctor in psych, you deal with a lot of the physical issues. So you're like the GP within the psych unit, say. But then when I was on call in Palmy, the way that the role works is, you do that during the day, but if you're on call at the night, then you deal with the psychiatric things that come through. So it gave me an opportunity to see what that was like, and oh my gosh, like, it was really interesting. It was like I actually studied because I knew I had to be on call and I hadn't dealt with this sort of stuff before. So I actually studied for it, which I didn't do for any like other like medical issues. Like I didn't really study once I graduated because I was like, oh, this stuff is kind of boring. So I actually did some study about, depression and risk assessments and stuff like that. And so then when I actually saw people when I was on call, I was like, oh my God, that was amazing. Like I just felt really fulfilled. Like I was like, I loved that. That was so good. And so that started to show me, like I was like, I actually really enjoy doing this and talking to people. And then I think I ended the year I picked up some jobs in Waikato doing surgery, and I just, stuff that people coming in with sounds really awful. The stuff people coming in with, I was just like, I don't really care. Okay. Like if you've got some mental health issues, I will talk to you about that or whatever, but I don't really care about your like appendicitis. Like I know that you're in pain, I'll just sort it out, but no thank you. But so that really showed me, like I just became more and more cynical in the medical field, and I was like, oh, that really showed me that I didn't have any interest in it.
Right.
I wasn't willing to study it. It didn't interest me, so obviously that's not a career for me.
Yeah.
So then it was tossing up between GP and psych, and I talked to one of the girls who had the same situation. She was doing psych, and she said pretty much it came down to GPs get 15 minutes to pretty much deal with the same stuff that psychiatrists are dealing with, but in an hour. So I was like, oh, okay. So that's how I ended up there. And it's just, I know it's my field. Like I'm like, oh, it's just funny. I didn't,
And you're like, so it's not one of those things where you're there and just like, I need to get through this. It's one of those things where you're there and I'm like, I'm loving this type thing.
I love it. And yes, there's definitely, and lots of people, it doesn't work for some people. Some people it's not their field, and that is totally fine. They have the capacity to deal with other stuff. I don't have the capacity to deal with like heart attacks, like no thank you, but I will deal, like I'm happy to deal with this. So there are times when stuff is heavy and stuff is hard, and there's been times when I've had to say I can't see this next client because I'm a bit upset about this first one, and that's okay. And the cool thing is I think there's just this understanding within the field that stuff happens, and that's all good. Like we'll just pick someone else. They know that stuff affects us, and it's a bit of a give and take, and it's a bit of communication and having to say, okay, like this is a bit hard right now, can we push this back an hour, or
I think we need more people who are understanding like that in all workforces.
Totally do.
There are so many different things where it's like, oh, like I can't function 100% right now, and they're like, do you have any sick leave? Like, no, I don't. And it's like, okay,
and that guilt around sick leave as well, like it's a big thing. And I still feel it even with this job, like whether it's a mental health day or if I'm physically unwell, I'll still email in and say, oh, like I know I had some clients today, maybe I had some slots free in this day, so I still have that feel like I need to make up for it some way, but you don't, like you're sick, like all you need is time, like that's okay. And
I think it all comes down as well to you knowing that you need that, because there are some people who are just like, oh, I can push through.
Yes,
but then
again, it's that self-awareness.
Yeah,
you need to know what your limits are, and you need to know what's maybe triggering for you, or if this is going to help you or not. I think one of the fun things that I have is that if I get really, really overwhelmed, sometimes I have a panic attack. So if I start getting into that space, I know, oh, okay, I'm going to take a day off, or like I need time. So,
are there specific things that happen where you're just like, okay, it's like before it even happens, like you're at the preventative stage?
So actually I was really proud of myself. It's like a month or so ago, but I was really proud of myself because I managed it a lot better than I have in the past. To stop myself actually having a panic attack. So I just get like my heart rate goes up, and I get really sweaty, and I get like, I feel really panicky, like I want to like go somewhere or run away somewhere. So so those are the sorts of things, and I if I can find a solution to whatever it is that's causing that, then I am okay. So it was just a client that I had seen that was a bit hard, and then I know that I had someone after that, and there was other things happening in my life that were just, I knew that I wasn't at my peak anyway. So maybe if I was at my peak, it wouldn't have happened anyway. Like the first client would have been fine, but it was because I was already a bit under the weather and not so good, and sleep deprived is one of my things as well. Then that was sort of my, those, I could feel myself, and I did some meditation. I tried to do some deep breathing, and that worked for a little bit, but it more just helped me realize that I can't see this client. And I think it was realizing that I couldn't see the client, and then having to talk to someone and be like, I can't see the next one. That was about, you feel like you're letting people down, but it's like, no, I'm not. There's someone available to see the next person, and that's okay. Yeah.
And you didn't build up that story that, like, if I do this, like, everyone's going to hate me. There's going to be a picture of me in the staff room that says she gives up her clients because she's not ready. Like, you know, it's not one of those things where like, everyone's so understanding, so much more understanding.
Yes, there's so much more, so much more understanding. I think it helps, and I know it's hard, but it helps that I know that I don't do this all the time. Having to remind myself, this is not your normal. People know that you don't normally do this, that this is not, you don't ever really ask for clients to not be able to see someone. Like, so that kind of helps know, you have to remind yourself of it. Like, this is not what I normally do. And if it is it that because you're so under par of what your baseline is though? So again, you need a break. Yeah. But you know, so if you are doing that, you're gonna be like, hey, like, what's going on for you that this is happening?
So if you're sleeping well, you're eating well, you're exercising, and all those different things are still happening, that's when you know, like, it's time for you to step back a little bit. Yeah, like,
what's going on for you that you need to actually have a break. Like, actually, do you need a few weeks off work? Like, do you need a... I mean, I when my relationship first broke up earlier this year, mid-year, I had to sit down with my manager, who allowed me the space to do that, allowed me the space to be like, things are not going so great. I do need a little bit of time off, or we need to shuffle around my calendar a little bit so I'm not seeing so many clients in a day or something like that. But, you know, but if you don't know that that's what you need or that's what's going to help you, then you're just going to keep going until you reach a breaking point.
Absolutely.
And then you'll have more time off than if you could have just done it at the start.
Exactly, it's all those sorts of things where you just like vicious cycle rather than just like, how about we sort something out now so that we can actually start like moving on without having to come back and like fixing. So we're not just putting tape over the holes, we're actually like fixing the holes properly and then going off.
And I think a part of us as well, and I think maybe what I previously, part of us thinks that if something dramatic happens as well, is that people will see, I need a break. But actually you don't need to get to that stage for that to happen, and it might be the environment that you're in that you feel like that. Whereas I'm lucky enough that the environment, and I don't need to do that, I can verbalise that. But you don't need to... like when I was a kid, I used to always say I have a sore stomach, and maybe I did have a sore stomach, but really I was just not happy at school. So it's like, you don't have to have a physical problem, or it doesn't have to be a visible problem for you to say, I need a break. I think we just like, I don't know. I think it does come down to like letting people down, but then also that whole, it's not your, I guess it is your ego a little bit, that you don't want that to be associated with you as that person who's not okay or that person who's not doing too well and needed time off. But like the thing is, I think now that we're a little bit more accepting of that sort of thing, people are like, I'm so glad you took that time for yourself, and we'll do what we can, because like there may be a time where I'll need it. Like, everyone's not okay all the time. So if I can be understanding for you now, then hopefully if I need that space, then you can be understanding for me. I think they really I think it's happening, that perception shift about how we view all these things. And
just one last question on that stuff before we get to the final question that we ask everyone. It's just to do with kind of when you're practicing and when you're in a, say for example, you're in a consultation and stuff, there's a lens that you put on to have conversations with people, because you're trying to identify different things. And it's kind of just what you do, because you're like, okay, that leads to that, that leads to that, that leads to that. How, like, do you find it easy to switch out of that? So like, say you've just done a full day of work and then you have to go and like socialize with other people. Can you just like take the doctor away and just be Brittany?
I don't know if I think there's two parts to it. I don't know if I'm ever not Dr. Brittany, like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? There's part of me that enjoys, the reality is, the way I look at it is, in my profession, is I hold space for people.
Good.
That's at this stage, and again, I'm very early in my trajectory, so at this stage, how I see it is I hold space for people, and I enjoy holding space for people in real life too. Like, that's fun. I mean, you know, so in terms of that, in terms of, I think, shedding stuff from the day, it's okay. I don't know if it's, I've had this ability to compartmentalize, or do I, or is that bad? I don't know. It hasn't got me yet. But there's definitely stuff that I've actually, earlier in the year, there's definitely stuff that I've come home with, and I've had to process things.
Yeah.
But I think it's the recognizing that this was a bit harder. I need time to process this, and these are the things that I need to do to help me through process that. Whether or not it was I had to follow up something up the next day to make sure, or to check in on something,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Right. No.
I can be, it's me. It's still me.
Yeah, I think that's probably important though. Like you don't want to have two separate people. Like maybe like there's an additional something that you put on when you go into work, but then like the essence of yourself should still be there.
Yeah, I give less of myself. I think is the only difference. Is that I give less of my opinion and less of in terms of You don't just say break up with the guy, he's the one causing you to...
Yeah, you're talking about the drunk toilet talks when like all the girls would go in and then like come out super angry. You're like, what happened? Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, but so there'll be clients that are in relationships that are not working for them, and you can see it. But I think you see that in your friends as well.
That's true.
Friends will talk to you about something, and I think the reality is you shouldn't be launching in on your opinion anyway. Again, you should just be holding space. So to some extent, I just probably give less of myself and allow more space for them rather than And
it's just that space where people can like unfilter like what they're saying.
Yeah, unfiltered conversation.
And just go through their thoughts, because sometimes they've never ever put it out there like that before. Yeah,
and not feel judged.
Yeah,
just it's all good. Yeah, say some swear words, all good. And I think clients find that good.
Yeah,
like I'll say the word shit sometimes, and I think
well, they're like, but you're a doctor, you can't be swearing. Yeah,
and you're like, but life is shit sometimes. Like that sucks. Yeah, so
like sometimes when I just tell, this is totally off topic, but like sometimes I'm just like, sometimes I just like sit all day and watch Netflix, and then they're like, but you're like the exercise guy. I'm like, yeah, but some days like I need a day off, and then they're like,
totally. And you can be both.
Yeah. And then they're way more honest after that, because they're just like, you're human too. And they're like,
so
well, anyway, so I've just been eating ice cream, like going through. It's like, all right, there we go. That's where we can work on this now. Otherwise, it's just like, because recall, everyone, like say you're talking to an expert or a professional, you're always going to give off your best self, because you don't want them to judge you. So if you can like break it down to just be like, we're both human, we're both here. Yeah. I also do things that are very bad, and I can admit it. Yeah. Then they're like, oh, well, you won't judge me then, because you do it too.
Yeah, exactly, which I think is really good. Yeah, need more of that in every profession.
But you're enjoying what you're doing.
Enjoy it, yeah. It's good. I'm enjoying it, yes.
And your energy is like being maintained or like going up?
Energy is good. I need to refresh sometimes, and that's fine. And I do other stuff outside of my job, so my job's not my be all and end all. So I think that's really important. I get energy through different things, and then interactions with other people too. Yeah. Very
good. So we're on to our final question, the one that we ask everyone on the show, because we hopefully, like, there are plenty of tangible things that you have already spoken about. So hopefully there's something else that we can have different. But so it's just something that you do close to every day or nearly every day that makes you feel like you've optimized your day, or it's like part of you. Like, I'll always make time for this thing.
Oh, yes, actually. I have this app called the Calm app.
Calm, yes, I'm on Calm too. I love it. Yes,
so the things that I do is I write in my journal every day. In the evening, so my routine, and I don't always do it. Like some days I miss it, and at the end of the day, that's fine. Cool. But I write in my journal, even if it's one word or a sentence or a page, just write something. And then on the Calm app, I started this at the start of lockdown. I put in how are you feeling, I think is the thing. So you put in how you're feeling. So you just put in the emoji of, and whatever the word is associated with it. And that's really good, because I recently just looked at it. So it's gone up to March. I have got, like, my emotions have settled a lot more, and I'm a lot more peaceful, I think, from what I see. But it's cool to see the transition, and you're like, yes, I think that's really important to be aware of. And then the third thing is, I recently started, because I have not, like, my sleeping has been really bad, and I heard that I looked up that if you do gratitude every night before you go to sleep, sometimes it can help. So I now fill in the gratitude thing. It's like 3 things you're grateful for that you enjoy during the day, and so that's really good. So that's just like my routine. Yeah, no,
that's awesome. And for your journaling, like you said, you just write like a couple of words, or it could be a whole heap. Is there anything in particular that guides that writing, or do you just write?
I just write whatever I'm feeling in that moment. Cool. There's no pressure. The main thing is I don't put pressure on myself, because I used to put pressure on myself, and that's when I'd have like years between writing stuff. So now it's just like, if I just say, oh, I'm feeling sad, like that's it. That's all you have to write. But sometimes then that will go into these are the things I think that are causing me to feel this way.
Yeah.
Or if I want to write a memory that I want to remember later on, or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, but there's no pressure. It's just like however I'm feeling in that moment, or whatever happened in that moment. Yeah.
And this is something that I'm always quite like interested in when people are talking about gratitude, because gratitude always starts off as this thing where it's like, what am I grateful for? And you're like, like
but you do.
For ages, you're just like, am I grateful for anything?
Yeah.
And then it gets to the point where you're like, very, very easy. Did you find that like it went from all of these grandiose things, like there was this massive, I'm grateful for like XYZ, which are just like you can only get maybe once every 6 months, to now it's just everyday things, and you're just making sure you're reminding yourself of the basics, or nah?
I'm still like I haven't quite got into seeing the transition yet.
Yeah.
I think it's more just getting myself in a more positive mind frame. So I'm stopping those negative thoughts that are happening that cause me to be in negative mind frame. So now I'm trying to be in a more positive mind frame. So it's more around that than anything else. So sometimes, if I can't, sometimes if I can't think of anything specific that happened in the day, then then I'm thinking about the things that are like, I've got a roof over my head. Like that is I'm grateful that I've got food accessible to myself. Like I've got a job, a stable job. I can have income. Like that is a privilege.
Yeah.
So if there was nothing specific that happened in my day that I can think about, because I do like to pick up things during my day, then then I do think about all those things. So yeah.
So it's like a time for reflection as well.
Reflection, on the day. Yeah.
That was awesome.
Good stuff.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You were talking about the times where you're just like, sometimes I just had to block out time. Like, whoopsie, sorry, I had to make you come and do a podcast.
Oh, no, you're fine. No, it was fun.
It was very, very enjoyable, and I learned a lot, and I started talking more about myself, and I was just like, here we go again.
I wasn't sure how much. I was like,
it was a good transaction, a good space, solid space. But thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate that, and we're looking forward to everything that you do in the future.
Sweet. Looking forward to what you're doing in the future too.
Yeah, maybe. Exciting. It'll be all right. All right, then.
Watching Netflix.